What's going on, guys? Welcome back to episode 465 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, October 26, 2022. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. We're going to answer any questions from the last week, whether it be from last week's episode or from the last week since then, on next week's show on November 2nd, as I mentioned last week. This is being recorded in advance, so just keep that in mind. Let's get right into it, though. If you want to send any questions to the show, you could do so for next week by tweeting me on Twitter at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. That goes for last week's too. So like I said, if you dropped a question on last week's video or tweeted it or Facebooked it, whatever, that's not even a word, but Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, it will be included in next week for a nice supersized edition back to our regularly scheduled programming. So let's get into these questions from last week, the ones I did not answer, starting with Micah Does It from YouTube. Their first question was, with Triple H's support for women's wrestling, do you think we will see an Evolution 2 pay-per-view for the women of WWE? I was going to say, before Triple H took over, probably not, because the last one we got was almost exactly 4 years ago, actually, probably 4 years ago, either today or maybe it was October 28th. It was one of those days. But it's been 4 years since that first one, which is wild to think about. It feels like it wasn't that long ago. It was a great show. I think a big reason as to why they did that show, obviously for the publicity of it, but mostly because when they had Crown Jewel that year, that was their first Crown Jewel pay-per-view, their second Saudi show that WWE had done, obviously no women on it. And now we have women's matches on the Saudi shows, more than one. They're allowed to do more stuff, wear actual ring attire for the most part, not just baggy shirts, which is nice. It's not really where it should be, but we're getting progression, which is nice. That being said, I don't know if they would do another Evolution show. I think, honestly, I would start with another Mae Young Classic. I thought those were great, really bringing in new women from those tournaments, signing. A lot of the women that were in those first two tournaments were signed soon after. And some of them, most of them, may not even be here anymore just because they were let go or whatever. But Dakota Kai may have already been signed before that, but Toni Storm was signed out of that. Doudrop, Mia Yim, who's obviously no longer there currently as I record this anyway. Maybe she's back by now. But Mia Yim, there were a ton. Obviously, Tegan Knox, I think she was already signed before she was in it. Io Shirai, Kairi Sane, the list goes on and on. They had a lot of great women in those tournaments, and I would love to see it brought back. Meiko Satomura being another one. I would rather see that before another Evolution 2. But even if the Evolution 2, I would like to see them do another one. I don't know if they will. It increases the chances with Triple H in charge. But, just because, I've talked to Charlotte about it before. I've asked her about it. She said, well, I don't want our own pay-per-view for just the women. I would rather be the main event on an all-gender show, men, women, whatever. I get that standpoint, but that didn't stop NWA last year, and they didn't do a second one, which was fucking dumb. That didn't stop NWA from doing their own women's pay-per-view last August, and it was fantastic. It was a great show. Was that Empower pay-per-view? So, again, they didn't run another one, and it also begs the question, if WWE were to do a Mae Young Classic, is there enough female unsigned talent out there to make it work? If you mix the current women in NXT with free agents, I think there is. Just because we haven't seen them on WWE or AEW doesn't mean they don't exist. Although there are a lot of women in AEW that aren't currently signed, I don't think, to full-time deals anyway, that could be used for it because you get used for Dark, and there's a lot of people that were on Dark that went to WWE, like Cora Jade. She was formerly known as Elena Black. Cole Carter went to WWE, got fired a couple of months ago due to just violating their policy or whatever for whatever. Now is back in AEW, but he was another one that was on Dark and then went to WWE among others. So that could work. I would like to see an Evolution 2 is the bottom line. Would they do another one? I don't know. I feel like, honestly, with all the talk, and we talked about this last week, with all the talk of the revamped pay-per-view schedule, less is more. Maybe a 2-hour, I don't know if a TV special would work or a Peacock exclusive event, which is basically just a fucking premium live event or a pay-per-view at this point. I'm thinking the events they had years ago on the network, like the MSG show or Roadblock before. Was it before it became a pay-per-view again? I think it was in March of 2016. Yeah, they brought it back as a pay-per-view in December of that same year. That show, Beast from the East. They don't really do that sort of stuff anymore where it's like a house show but televised for like a short special on the network or Peacock. That would be interesting. I don't know if they need their own pay-per-view again. Again, like I said, it would be cool, a great showcase for the current women of Raw and SmackDown and NXT. But there's just too many pay-per-views as it is. And when I laid out my pay-per-view schedule here on Hashtag and again on WrestleRant Radio the next day, there just isn't room for doing another women's show. So again, you could do it. I wouldn't complain. I think it'd be great. I would like to see it. But realistically, logistically speaking, they probably won't do another one. Maybe in a different form or fashion. I don't even know if they necessarily need to at this point. It's been 4 years. But I think moving towards a Mae Young Classic again, or a Queen's Crown tournament done the right way, honestly, I would rather see that sort of stuff before another Evolution pay-per-view, for as good as that show was. Their second question, would you like to see Dave Bautista as the headliner for the 2023 WWE Hall of Fame class for the theme of WrestleMania Hollywood, and who should induct them? Most definitely. I think The Rock would be perfect, obviously, given his ties to Hollywood. That's all dependent on whether he can make it, whether he can even be at the event, because obviously we still don't know if we're getting Rock and Roman to WrestleMania next year. To me, it's either next year or we're probably not getting it at all. I don't know if they can wait until WrestleMania 40. Rock's another year older. Roman would be another year removed from his tribal chief character. By that point, he may be a babyface again. The reign's probably over. The match doesn't need to be for the championship anyway, although it would help with Roman winning. Roman's going to win regardless. There's really no doubt about that, when or even if the match happens. But if he can't work a match, maybe he can just come in for the Hall of Fame, do something on the Hall of Fame night, cut a quick promo. I mean, the guy hasn't made an in-person appearance at a WWE show in over 3 years, since that first SmackDown on Fox 3 years ago. That was in California. I don't know where he's living now, but if he can make a quick appearance in the Hall of Fame, I don't see why not. That wouldn't require him to be on Raw or SmackDown in the weeks preceding the pay-per-view, to do any promos, really any extra work aside from showing up. And then it would be cool if he was at WrestleMania among the other Hall of Fame inductees, but even that might be tough due to his schedule. The guy's the busiest man in the world, I would assume. So Rock would be ideal, but I don't think I've heard no talk about that. Doesn't mean that won't happen. I think it's more likely they get him for a match. But if not Rock, I think Batista should probably go in next year. He obviously couldn't make it this year due to the circumstances surrounding it and whatever. Or I think it was in what was it? He was supposed to be inducted, I think, in 2020, right? I think that was the year that he was supposed to be inducted. 2021, he couldn't make it, although they were in Tampa for that show. For 2022... it was The Undertaker, so they weren't going to induct him in the same year as The Undertaker. So I forgot what it was. I remember reading him saying, hey, I'm going to respectfully pass this time. I'll be back another year. I think that was in 2021. So he couldn't come in for 2021. 2022 was obviously all about The Undertaker. I see no reason if it's not The Rock, and it probably won't be, having Batista as the headliner. As far as who inducts him, I think it's got to be Triple H. I mean, Triple H, first of all, he holds him in very high regard. Triple H is back in the fold now, so we know he's going to be there. I mean, he runs the fucking company, basically, at this point. Those two things, and the fact that, he was very instrumental in the rise of Batista, not only behind the scenes in enlisting him in Evolution, but also on screen and putting him over 3 straight times on pay-per-view, which you never saw with Triple H back then. In the early 2000s, not that the guy would never lose, but during his reign of terror, so to speak, during those early 2000 years, Triple H rarely lost to the same person more than once, especially consecutively. And clean, too, at WrestleMania 21, Backlash 05, and Vengeance 05 in that great Hell in a Cell match. So I think it's got to be Triple H. I know he's had history with John Cena, Ric Flair he's very close with, among other people. I see it being no one else but Triple H. So I think it's going to be Batista. My money is on Batista headlining next year if he can carve out the time to be there. He's not quite as busy as The Rock, but he is busy. I think he will be there. I think he will be inducted. And I do think, not to wrestle, but I do think he will be there to be inducted by Triple H. Nike Only from YouTube, their first question was, with the New Day's 483-day title reign possibly coming to an end by the Usos, could that be the reason for a New Day breakup and set up an Xavier Woods heel turn, since he's the only member of the New Day to not hold the WWE title? Absolutely not. I do think the Usos will break the record. I don't think them failing to break the record is going to cause any sort of a rift in the New Day. I think it's pretty obvious at this point, and I'm not saying you're wrong for thinking that, because I was in the same boat 3 years ago. I thought Big E would turn on Kofi. He would be the one to either cost Kofi the championship or beat Kofi for the title. We would get our big breakup then. The New Day had been around for 5 years, which felt like an eternity back then. We're closing in on almost a decade of the New Day. 8 years this November, which is fucking crazy for a consistent tag team / stable on WWE television. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they made that pretty clear by now. They're for what purpose? Xavier Woods turning heel on Kofi because Big E's not there, and probably at the very earliest he will not be back until like mid 2023, if he's back at all. I mean, his neck injury was extremely serious, and he's lucky the guy's even still alive. That being said, he would be turning on Kofi for what, a short-lived Kofi-Xavier feud? Xavier's not someone they're going to push on their own as a heel, especially. If he's away from the New Day, the guy's very talented. I love Xavier. They did give him the King of the Ring crown. I think he is worthy of an Intercontinental title run. I doubt Triple H takes over. And if Vince wouldn't budge on the New Day heel turn thing, like he couldn't convince them to do it, I don't think Triple H would either. I don't think he would even want that. So say what you will about them being stale and whatever. I mean, they're the fucking New Day. They've been around forever. They're extremely popular. They're extremely over, and they're still entertaining, depending on the storyline they're having and whatever. I don't think there's any real need to break them up. I know, again, they've been around forever, but WWE needs established tag teams, and they fill that void. So, and they're great, and I just don't really see any purpose in breaking them up, because Kofi probably isn't going towards the main event again. Xavier Woods sure as hell not going towards the main event again, so that's a hard no on that one. His second question, should WWE run Shinsuke Nakamura versus Gunther for the Intercontinental title? I don't know if you meant to say run back Nakamura and Gunther for the title, or like run for the first time, because obviously they already had a match in the main event of SmackDown 2 months ago for that championship, and it was a great match. I don't really want to see them run it back right now. I don't really need to see them run it back for a while. I mean, there's a lot of opponents for Gunther to face on SmackDown. He already faced Sheamus twice. Those matches were tremendous, among the best of the year. Rey Mysterio's coming up soon. I don't know when they're doing that match, but they're going to be doing Rey and Gunther for the championship at some point. And SmackDown has a whole heap of baby faces that he can defend against. Nakamura is not beating Gunther. He should not beat Gunther for that championship. There's no real reason to revisit that right now. So no. But at some point down the road, when enough time has passed, then yeah, they could do the match again, and I hope they do, because that first match was great on SmackDown 2 months ago. Joe M. from YouTube, his question was, Jim Cornette on his podcast recently mentioned that Triple H would have fit the role of Thor perfectly. He said this without actually knowing that Triple H was considered for the role over a decade ago. It's impossible to know, seeing as it never happened. But how different would both the WWE and MCU be today if that had actually come to fruition? Would Daniel Bryan have been able to have the main roster career he led if Triple H wasn't around to put him over at WrestleMania 30? Would NXT even exist anymore? Would Triple H have been able to become as popular in the Thor role as Chris Hemsworth? Definitely not in that last category. Chris Hemsworth is amazing. Not that Triple H would have been a bad actor. If they went with Triple H, first of all, I'm not even sure if he would still be Thor today. No disrespect to Triple H, but he's just not as dynamic of an actor / character as Chris Hemsworth was, and ever will be. So, I mean, could you imagine fucking Triple H in Ragnarok? Triple H has done some great comedy work on WWE TV, but him in a role like that with that sort of character arc, I mean, Thor was pretty boring in those early movies, but Hemsworth has done that character better than anyone ever could. So, I don't think he would have become remotely as successful as Hemsworth was. They honestly probably would have recast him. Could he have moved on like The Rock to a bigger Hollywood career had it taken off? I don't know if it would have taken off. Thor may have very possibly been a short-lived character. I don't know if it would have been financially successful to continue on with the franchise. I mean, those early Thor movies aren't great, but they made enough money for them to justify making more movies and putting them in the Avengers and stuff like that. I don't know if he would have gotten that with Triple H. I just can't see, I was going to say Howard Stark, Robert Downey Jr., I meant to say, interacting with fucking Paul Levesque in the Avengers and shit like that. I don't know if Triple H would have had it in him to take on that big of a role and to be in the MCU today. But let's say in an alternate universe that happened and he wasn't in WWE. Would Daniel Bryan still be a big star? Absolutely. Daniel Bryan, was already well on his way to becoming big in WWE, even without Triple H as the heel foil in 2014. Remember, Daniel Bryan was fucking over in 2012. and in 2013. That had nothing to do with Triple H. The Triple H match solidified him as a star at WrestleMania 30, but that was after he had already beaten John Cena at SummerSlam 2013, and he had that great yes chant and got over in 2012 in the match in Sheamus, and that feud with Sheamus in early 2012 as well. So Daniel Bryan would have been fine. NXT probably would not exist, though. Had Triple H moved on or passed away, God forbid, or whatever, NXT, even if it was, I mean, we had NXT before Triple H took over, but would it have become what it did in 2012 and beyond? Absolutely not. I don't know if anyone in that company shared the same vision and had the same power that Triple H did at that point to make NXT what it was and what it is today. They would still have a developmental system. It might even be NXT, but it would not have been the success that it was and is now. So that's definitely no. As far as like, would NXT even be around if Triple H wasn't there? Definitely not, because Vince certainly wasn't pushing for the future of WWE. He was content with the stars they already made in the early 2000s. It wasn't really until Triple H started to really push the agenda of NXT. And a lot of people out of developmental, like Roman Reigns, probably would have been fine. Would they have hired more indie people in the mid-2010s? Probably not, had it not been for Triple H. I mean, they had already signed Bryan and Punk and people like that, but would have Kevin Owens have gotten a shot and other people like that? Honestly, probably not. Justin K. from Facebook, his question was, since the departure of Nash Carter from NXT, Wesley has been really up and down during the NXT tapings. I had the idea of having Wesley team up with Ricochet on the main roster. What do you think of that combo, and would they be over in your eyes? I mean, yeah, if they were pushed, then they could be over. I mean, it really is all a matter of the booking. Almost, I don't want to say anyone can be over, but if you position someone strong enough and they're good enough to justify being in that role, then yeah, they'll get over. I mean, Wesley and Ricochet are talented enough, and if they were actually showcased as a tag team strong enough, then they would get over for sure. I don't mind the idea. I mean, Ricochet is great and all, obviously one of the best high flyers in the world. I feel like we've reached the point with him where he's only going to get so far. He was never going to be world champion. I mean, the guy's amazing, but his mic skills are nearly non-existent. He's just not that guy. He could be more successful in the mid-card role. I mean, he had a very forgettable United States Championship run that was like a month long, 3 weeks long. The Intercontinental title stuff was kind of an afterthought, and that was before Triple H took over anyway. He has a semi-regular presence on SmackDown, but he's just kind of there at this point to put other people over, do cool Ricochet things, and that's about it. Ricochet's had a few partners on the main roster, from Cedric to Apollo, among other people. He hasn't won gold with any of them, I don't think, unless I'm missing something, unless I'm forgetting a reign that happened in the last couple of years. Wesley's awesome, though. I think Wesley can certainly, a lot like Ricochet, do well on his own. He just hasn't been ruined by the booking yet. So if he were to get called up on his own, with the right push, I think he can get over. That being said, if he were to get lost in the shuffle, a team with Ricochet isn't a bad idea. They need more tag teams. Them against the Usos, them against the New Day, them against the Profits, among other teams, would be pretty great. I would not be opposed to that at all. At ULGoon91, their first question was, do you think that Tennille Dashwood will return to WWE as Emma? I don't know. I'm not going to say that I thought she would, but I thought there was a chance. I mean, at this point, Triple H is a legit bringing back, I don't want to say the bottom of the barrel, because none of the talent are it's not like he's bringing back fucking Primo and Epico and the Ascension and people that were fired years ago thinking, oh, they were in NXT. Not that Primo and Epico were, but, let's bring back everyone that was fired. I mean, the fucking OC. The thing is, I don't give a shit about the OC at this point, but them being brought back made sense within the story. He wanted to right a wrong with them getting fired. It wasn't his fault. It was kind of his fault they stayed in 2019, so we kind of made it up to him by bringing him back. And it makes sense with the storyline and whatever. Tennille is great. Obviously, Triple H knows her well from her NXT days. She was in that first ever NXT Women's Championship match with Paige, lost, not headline, but was in one of the featured matches at Arrival less than a year later with Paige, lost that too. And she never really could capture that magic again. She went to the main roster, completely fucking flopped. They did the whole dumb dancing character. That went nowhere, was not over. It could be over with the right booking. They positioned her as a loser, though. Went back to NXT, had a great run there. In 2015 or so. And then again, she got called back up to the main roster in 2016 and did nothing. She was there for a year and a half. Injuries got the best of her. The Emelina shit fell through. And it doesn't help either that she hasn't exactly lit the world on fire in her time away from WWE. I think she's very talented. I think she's had some good matches in the last few years. But she was in Ring of Honor for a short time, wasn't there very long, went to Impact, where she's been ever since in 2019. I mean, actually, she left a couple months ago. Her contract expired. I guess she can go back, but she hit a ceiling there, too. She wasn't going to win the Knockouts Championship. She was the tag team champion twice or whatever. Really not much more for her to do there. Could she go to AEW? Sure. But I mean, I think it's a little weird that she's been a free agent now for 2 or 3 months and no company has signed her unless she's perfectly content being a free agent. So I would like to see her back in WWE. She got she didn't get a fair shake during her first time there on the main roster. Is she going to be a women's champion? I don't think so. I mean, there's far, better women's wrestlers at this point, fresher faces they should be pushing over to Neil Dashwood. But I think bringing her back as a hand on SmackDown would be cool. Dana Brooke is a lost fucking cause. I don't know if you would reunite them, and Dana Brooke is just awful. Maybe she can be like the lackey for Emma again. I don't know how they could convince Dana Brooke in character to do that, because she's been a babyface for so long. She's been successful, quote-unquote, on her own as a 24/7 champion, which she still is, by the way. We don't see the title on Raw anymore, which, thank God, but just get the fuck rid of it. Anyway, though, I think bringing back Tenille would be good. I don't know if I see it at this point. Because at any point, at any time anyone's become available, like the OC, as soon as they were free from Impact, they went right back to WWE. So, I feel like they, they probably would have snatched her back up by now. In AEW, too, I'm very surprised. Same thing. As soon as someone's free from Impact or another deal, they bring those people right in. And Emma was not among them. So, maybe there's something else going on that I don't know about. Maybe she'll go back to Impact. I would like to see her back in WWE. She would probably do better there than in AEW, in my opinion. But time will tell. I don't, see it happening as a concrete possibility, because I feel like if it was going to happen, probably would have happened by now. His second question, do you think that John Cena will go the entirety of this year without competing at all? I do. I mean, it's late October as we speak now. I don't think he's wrestling at Survivor Series. I know they're in Boston this year for Survivor Series. It was where he won the World Heavyweight Championship at fucking Survivor Series in Boston in 2008 and 2013, respectively. I don't think he's coming in for that show. I don't think John Cena is going to be on fucking War Games. We've heard no rumblings of Cena coming back. There's no pay-per-view in December, and he's not wrestling on Raw or SmackDown at this point. I know he did in 2018, 2019, but he hasn't done that since then. He's just a much bigger star in Hollywood, and he's much bigger. He's basically like this generation's Hogan or Rock, in that he'll come in for the pay-per-view stuff, a one and done, and that's about it. I mean, he was on Raw a couple of months ago for his anniversary show, but that was an appearance and not a match. And that was the last time we saw him, too. That was fucking 4 months ago. That's crazy. But yeah, no, I don't think he's wrestling this year. And I think, as you've mentioned before, or whoever, that would make the first John Cena-less year in WWE without Cena in a match on TV since 2001. Because obviously he debuted in 2002. He had that Firefly Funhouse match in 2020. I mean, it was very entertaining. It wasn't an actual match. And then last year, he wrestled on the, some of the house shows and dark matches and shit. He wrestled at SummerSlam. But he has not had a single match all year. He didn't wrestle in that dark match, I don't think, when he was at Raw a couple of months ago, and he hasn't appeared otherwise. So, I don't know when Cena's going to be back. I would assume there's a chance he could be at Mania, maybe, if the match made sense. And you don't want to waste Cena on pointless matches at this point, because he probably doesn't have that many matches left. But to answer your question in short, no, I don't think we're getting Cena in a match in WWE. Really anywhere, obviously. He's not wrestling in AEW. I want to clarify that. Before the end of 2023. Or before the end of 2022. At the Wrestle Guy Cell with the final... Oh, no, we got 2 questions left. He has the second to last question. Do you think Bobby Lashley has to go over on Brock Lesnar at Crown Jewel? I very much think he needs to, and have the idea that he should be Roman Reigns' opponent after Logan Paul. So here's the thing. I think Bobby realistically should win, but I also think that Brock should probably win. If I had to pick, if I'm booking, Brock wins. And that sounds silly to a lot of people. Oh, why would you bury Bobby? Bobby's at a point now where it's not like he's undefeated. The guy can endure a loss and he's okay. The guy's a made man at this point. He's a 2-time WWE champion. He's beaten Brock before. He beat Roman Reigns years ago. He's beaten Drew McIntyre all these times. He's, been in featured matches at Mania. Featured matches of all these pay-per-views. He's beaten fucking Goldberg before. I mean, he's fine. I don't worry with Bobby losing to Brock that Bobby's going to go down to the undercard or whatever. He was a successful United States champion for a few months. He's been very popular this year as a babyface. I think he's perfectly fine if he loses. Let's just put it that way. I think he kind of has to, because the thing with Brock, not that he's going to be a loser if he loses again. I guess from a storyline standpoint, he would be. But let's look at it this way. Brock has lost probably half, if not more, of the matches he's had in the last year since he came back to WWE at SummerSlam 2021. He was at Crown Jewel last year, lost. He was at Day 1, and he won the championship that night, but then he lost it to Bobby like 3 weeks later. Won the Rumble that night, won at Elimination Chamber. So he did win, 3 matches at that point, but then he lost at WrestleMania, and he lost at SummerSlam. So he's lost 4 matches, won 3. He kind of has to win the next one. And he also lost to Bobby at the Rumble, too, so it kind of makes sense if Brock wins this one. I don't know how. He probably wins clean. I want a better match than what we got at the Rumble, I'll tell you that much. I didn't hate that match, but I think they can do better. I think Brock can win this next match, and then you can build, ideally, and Triple H isn't dumb, so I don't know what he has in mind, but I would have Brock win this next match, and then maybe have Bobby win the rubber match at WrestleMania or the Rumble or whatever. Maybe even inside the Fight Pit or something like that. Bobby can go over in the end. I don't know if that's going to happen, but you kind of have to have Brock win the next match. He's lost way too much for his, for beating Brock Lesnar to fucking matter at this point. And him beating Brock, cool, would set up him for Roman. I agree with you. But do we even really need that right now? Honestly, I think Bobby and Roman would be great, don't get me wrong. But looking ahead here, we have Survivor Series, because he's facing Logan at Crown Jewel. Survivor Series, I don't get the feeling Roman's defending on that show. He will be at that show. That was confirmed by PW Insider. He doesn't need to defend that night, though. I mean, on a 3 or 4 week build, how much can you really do anyway? War Games with Roman in it makes the most sense. So do that. Day 1 is not a thing. There's no December pay-per-view. Rumble's the next show. To me, he hasn't won a lot lately. He fucking lost to Dominic Mysterio on Monday's Raw. But I think he would do AJ Styles at the Rumble. I mean, you could have said, I said this a while ago, AJ Day 1 would have been perfect because they were in Atlanta, and now the show isn't apparently happening anymore per WrestleNomics. And I think PW Insider confirmed that too. But that would have been perfect. There is no Day 1, though. Could you do it as the first Raw of the year, the first SmackDown of the year, he defends against AJ? Sure. I would do it at the Rumble at this point. I mean, Roman and AJ have history at the fucking Rumble. When AJ debuted, he confronted Roman in the Rumble. AJ debuted that match. It makes sense. AJ's not winning, but you can also build, you could do it on TV if you wanted to the OC versus the Bloodline. So it's not as if Bobby loses to Brock, you have no opponents for Roman. You could easily build to AJ at the Rumble. You got to give him more fucking wins, though. I mean, if the guy keeps losing to Dominic fucking Mysterio, no one's going to take him seriously as a threat to anyone on that roster, let alone Roman Reigns. But that's what I would do. I would do Roman and AJ at the Rumble show. Not in the Rumble match, but at the Rumble show. And then if they do another Saudi show in February, probably Elimination Chamber or whatever, you can do Bobby and Roman there. If Roman loses at Mania, which I think he should, I don't know if he will, but you can do Bobby and Roman there. And Bobby maybe by that point has already beaten Brock for a third time, or beaten them in their third match or whatever. So if you plan it out that way, I think it would make sense. Bottom line, though, I think Brock needs to win this next match. Unless Bobby's going on to face challenge Roman, imminently, him beating Brock, I mean, where is there really for him to go after that? So I think he can endure the loss and it's okay. If only to give Brock his win back from the Rumble, which I think is kind of necessary at this point. Last question at Bill Meister 88. Speaking of the Rumble, his question was, who would be your dream surprise entrant to the Royal Rumble this year? Who would it be? And who do you think is actually, who could actually return? And you can't say Cody, he said. My dream would be Kenny Omega, but I think we'll get Bad Bunny. I'm not good with the return sort of thing, because I feel like, first of all, anyone I've ever wanted to come back has. CM Punk would have been on that list, but he's in AEW now, so that's obviously not happening. Could he leave and go in the Rumble? I mean, even if he did leave AEW in the next couple months or get fired or whatever, I still don't think he'll be in the Rumble. The funny thing is that we were pitching Cody Rhodes in the Rumble this year, thinking, that would be funny, blah, blah, blah. And then he actually showed up in WWE a couple months later. To me, at this point, from the Legends I don't really think, first of all, Bad Bunny being in the Rumble would be cool, but we already got him in the Rumble earlier this year. I would not waste a spot on Bad Bunny. I wouldn't waste a spot on any celebrities at this point. Bad Bunny got a spot in the Rumble this year. Don't waste another spot on him or fucking Shane McMahon or whoever. the thing is with the legends, like, oh, this legend came back or whatever, we've kind of exhausted that pool. Like, they've brought back every fucking legend you can imagine. I don't think The Rock is going to be in the Rumble. I don't think Stone Cold Steve Austin would be in the Rumble. They probably shouldn't be anyway. To waste them in a Rumble would be stupid unless they win, which would also be dumb. We've kind of exhausted that pool. To me, I think the real surprise, like dream surprise, not any one person, but it would be someone from another company like AEW. Like, Okada would be fucking amazing. I don't know how many people would. I mean, I assume a decent amount of people in the building would react. I mean, usually hardcore fans attend the Rumble. It's not like he's been established in the WWE universe, though, is the problem. But if you bring back someone that used to be in WWE, like a Christian, like to me, I don't know if he's a dream entrant, and he's also had his fair share of like Rumble returns. But Jericho being in the Rumble would be cool. First of all, it would be 10 years removed from his last surprise Rumble return in 2013. That would be cool, first of all. Second of all, he's been in AEW. He just re-signed. You have to give something to AEW. Like, it would have to be a fair shake. You can't just bring an AEW person. They would have to mention, oh, that's AEW star Chris Jericho. Like, promote his fucking cruise or promote Dynamite or whatever. Maybe he's out there with a championship. I mean, there has to be some sort of a trade-off for AEW to make it AEW's worthwhile, and it's not just benefiting WWE. That's why I think the Billy Gunn thing fell through. It would have been cool if Billy Gunn was there last week for the DX reunion on Raw, but, everyone involved, I mean, Road Dogg said this, everyone involved was pissed that Billy couldn't be there. But listen, we also don't know the other end of the story. Even Road Dogg said himself that he doesn't deal with the inner workings of the company anymore. So there probably was another side of the story that we don't know about. Maybe Tony Khan will shed some light on it, and Tony Khan's a goof most of the time, but I would believe him if he said, listen, we would let him have Billy Gunn on Raw, but he has to, like, they have to promote our shit somehow. Like, they have to mention AEW or promote Dynamite or whatever the fuck. I mean, they can't just bring him in and then AEW gets nothing in return. They have to get some sort of exposure or like a talent on their show or whatever. I mean, it has to be fucking fair. A shout out is one thing. Like when they had Bryan Danielson do a shout out for Cena. That's cool and all. And, he's only in there for, it's a 10-second shout out or a 5-second shout out. That doesn't really hurt or really help anyone. That was cool. But having Billy Gunn on Raw in the flesh, I mean, they had to kind of give AEW something, and they probably didn't want to, and that's why they fell apart. So back to the Rumble thing, a real dream surprise entrant would be someone from like a New Japan or an AEW. I don't think that happens, especially given the terms that WWE and AEW appear to be on based on what Tony Khan has said. Triple H has said nothing about it. But based on what Tony Khan has said, doesn't sound like that's going to happen. So that would be a quote-unquote dream surprise entrant. Probably Jericho, because WWE fans know him. If he came out with Judas, that'd be sexy. But, break the walls down, classic WWE music, that would be cool too. Punk would be amazing too, but like I said, that's not even a dream. That's just not going to ever happen. As far as who I can actually see being in the Rumble, I think X-Pac makes the most sense. I was kind of pulling for him to be in the Rumble earlier this year. He looked good at the GCW show that I watched, the one GCW show I watched, which was fucking awful, but, he was on that show, and I was hoping to see him in the Rumble, and then he wasn't in there. RVD coming back for a Rumble one-off, which, again, he's made a Rumble return before in 2009, but I think that'd be cool. I think they're going to be in Texas for that show, if I'm not mistaken, so I don't know what Texas legends you can bring in, but, X-Pac, RVD are people that I expect / could be in there. RVD just went to the Hall of Fame like a year or two ago, I think in 2021, and X-Pac is, best friends with Triple H as part of DX, so he has not had an in-ring appearance in WWE in fucking forever, so I think he's owed that much, if only for a short stint in the Rumble. That's what I expect to happen, and what I would like to see happen. Also Gangrel as well. I think Gangrel being in the Rumble would be fucking cool. We haven't seen Gangrel in WWE in a long time. I know he made that one-off appearance in AEW a couple of months ago, which was cool, but it's not the same without the music. So to hear that music, and we've heard the music before when Edge came out to it at Day 1 last year, SummerSlam among all these other shows, SummerSlam this year I think too. It was great, but seeing him back with Edge or whatever in the Rumble or just appear alongside him, I feel like would be a great full circle moment to pay homage to the original brood in WWE with Gangrel and Edge. Christian would be cool too, but Christian's already in AEW, so that's obviously not happening. But that's going to do it, guys, for episode 465 here today of #AskGSM for Wednesday, October 26, 2022. Thank you guys for sending all the great questions last week to make this possible to film this in advance for today. So if you were wondering or if you sent in a question, for in the last week either left it on that video or tweeted it, whatever, and you were wondering why it wasn't answered here, well, this was recorded the day after the the episode last week. So just be mindful that I will gather any questions if I like it or whatever on YouTube or Twitter, Facebook. That usually means it's in the show, and it will be included in next week's edition on November 2nd, 2022 for episode 466. Until then, guys, if you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. I'll be back from California soon, so keep an eye out for more videos here on the channel. Until then, have an awesome one, and I'll catch your ass down the road.